Where's 4Kids Edits? Oh my god.
In One Piece. And today, we're going to be delving into the darkest timeline as we discuss some of the worst
It's about to be real funny
by the 4Kids dub. And I think it's definitely time to do this because I've pretty much ignored the 4Kids.
Oh my god. 4Kids.
Adaptation for the large majority of
got that right.
But in reality, it is such a huge part of
We covered the
every
boobas.
English-speaking One Piece fans' experience with the series. I mean, for example, my very first exposure with One Piece was the 4Kids dub, and as a result, it took me probably about another whole year before I actually.
So wait, the 4Kids dub, it got all the arcs? Like it's caught up with everything, or did they stop?
To give the series a chance. And even then, a lot of that chance involved watching this dub for far longer than I'd like to admit. But you have to understand that I'm an old man, and back in my day, sourcing anime online was not the easiest of things to do, and even finding good quality manga was a...
The anti-Jesus turning wine into water. What the hell? Why they gotta censor the wine?
pain. Oh, and everything was wildly illegal. But let's not go too deeply into that.
Nah, that's
we now
OD.
find ourselves here today to discuss this abomination. And some of you out there may ask, why are we only examining 5 things that 4Kids did horribly when pretty much every second of every episode could qualify? And it's because 5 is about all I can handle for one day. And so as a result...
Wait, I just noticed. I'm so slow. They took the 2 cigars out of his mouth. I'm trying to notice, like, what did it remove? And they took the cigars on... Bro, nothing wrong with the cigar.
Criteria for this list is as follows. To be considered one of the worst 4Kids changes, a moment or choice must deviate so ridiculously from the
It took off the tag
of One Piece that it either becomes a parody of itself,
Nah, they really didn't want these kids to get influenced, bro.
tears a gaping hole in the One Piece canon. Speaking of, nothing on this list must be canon, and in fact immediately after the conclusion of the video, I suggest we all just forget everything we've spoken about. But with that out of the way, let's begin, I guess.
What was the point of
to
censoring
top
his
5
mouth?
Worst changes made by the 4Kids dub. Number 5. Lollipop Sanji. Alright, we're starting with a very basic and...
No way they replaced the cigarette with a lollipop. Oh, no way.
Here, and that's precisely why we cannot ignore it. So look, here's the deal. Coming from an English-speaking Western country, I get why they censored the cigarette. You're marketing the show to kids, even teenagers, and it does actively promote smoking through the idea that Sanji smokes and Sanji is cool.
Yeah.
Smoking must be cool. That doesn't mean it isn't absolutely ridiculous though. And the primary issue is that, admittedly, like most things in the 4Kids dub, it is impossible to take Sanji seriously. Ever. Because he's always sucking on a lollipop. It takes away from great dramatic moments, and sort of comes to define Sanji in a way that the cigarettes never did. The thing about smoking Sanji is that cigarettes are an accessory. It's a character trait. However, a lollipop provides a much more bold statement, and instead of being a badass kicking chef guy, Sanji becomes the lollipop dude because it's just impossible to ignore.
That's whack.
Just like that, you have a perfectly captivating character reduced to the status of a temporary canon. And look, to be honest, this change is but one of many to do with smoking, and some may argue that other characters were impacted more heavily by this censorship. But I disagree simply due to the fact that Sanji is a key protagonist, and so this particular decision has a much greater long-term impact on the series as a whole. But of course, it certainly wasn't the worst
sad,
change
bro.
made by 4Kids. Number 4. Crocodiles Hook. Now if you're looking at this image and thinking, what's wrong? That looks exactly how I remembered it. Well, you'd be correct. This is quite possibly one of my favorite shots in the entire series, both in the anime and the manga. I love the colors, I love the silhouetting, but most of all, I love the feeling it gave me when I first laid eyes upon it, which was shock.
How did he censor it?
This was the first time that Luffy had truly been in a no-win situation, and nobody was coming to save him. It was dark and wonderfully suspense-building for a generally bright and happy shonen series. Alright, so with that in mind, let's examine what 4Kids managed to accomplish with this shot. Glorious, isn't it? The sheer lack of attention to detail, emotional intent, and any form of artistic integrity is
What's going on there?
in and of itself. It's a perfect representation of how to ruin something beyond repair. I mean, in this masterpiece, Luffy really does look like more of a reclining Renaissance nude, nestled carefully within the inviting crescent of Crocodile's Hook, which is really odd because he was yelling at him and just full of life a second before this happened. Not only that, but Luffy has also quite magically developed some sleeves on his upper body, despite the fact that he was wearing a sleeveless top in the shot immediately prior. This shot really does belong in a gallery, like a gallery of shit. Sort of like a museum
Damn.
of what not to
Okay,
do
Leon.
ever again, because I understand that, hey, maybe getting impaled is a bit dark for children's TV, but if you are going to go to the effort of censoring something for that audience, then at least get rid of the sleeves. This is lazy, confusing, pointless, and I cannot believe that someone was
censoring.
paid cash money to take time out of their day, perhaps even week, to make this happen. And with this sort of artistic integrity in mind, let's move on to number 3.
Oh, shit.
This thing. So this is probably the crowning achievement of 4 Kids
Oh, I
editing.
remember this
So I
scene.
get it. You're making a
Bro,
show
he had
that
a
focuses
strap.
towards
What is
children
this?
not
This is like some Inspector Gadget equipment, bro. Like, what is this? Yo.
too keen on the whole gun violence aspect. Cool. Entirely understandable. Although I do question the sanity involved when
Who's good,
choosing to
Chaos?
adapt a series that, especially early on, has such a huge focus on guns, to the point where it is absolutely impossible to edit them all out. So as a result, we get things like making them look like water pistols or chucking corks in them, which
Oh,
is
that's
sad, but
whack.
that's one thing. And it's entirely another when we are presented with this.
Bro, it's like the kids gonna see this regardless, bro. There's no point of censoring things like
I
this.
honestly can't tell if the result of this gun edit is because someone was feeling incredibly uncreative that day, or because someone was feeling far too creative that day.
Still, I'm
Either
chilling,
way,
chilling.
this is what we have. And I struggle to explain what this device is, or why Kobe, Luffy, or even the audience cares. As far as I can tell, what was once a gun is now some sort of precarious, trigger-activated power hammer. Which, first of all, the implications of that are so much more brutal than an actual
Look like a
gun.
clown
Because it
weapon,
implies that
bro.
Hippo is willing to use blunt force to quite violently injure and possibly kill Kobe. And I guess that might be where making it look so ridiculous comes into effect, because it minimizes the thought of potentially bludgeoning someone to death. But the problem is also that, well, Kobe could just run away, because this weapon is no longer a projectile and will have an incredibly short range. So what we have is a completely unthreatening, threatening scenario, in which the weapon is too ridiculous to accomplish anything, and instead of a watchable scene, all we have is a mind full of fuck. The best thing I can say for this change is that it does not impact the story going forward. Its ridiculousness, whilst at the height of 4Kids shenaniganry, is isolated. Unfortunately, the same
crazy.
cannot be said for our top 2 contenders. Number 2.
Alright, so number
Belmare's
2.
Dungeon. So this entry is so much less
Oh,
geeky than
Lord.
I made it sound, but as we explored in
Yeah.
the previous contender, 4Kids doesn't like guns. And thankfully, coming up, we have a more merciful edit than the Helmeppo abomination, however it comes at a much greater cost. So as I'm sure we're all familiar with, and if not, well, spoilers for a little
We are
series
currently
One Piece,
starting the Little
climax of
Garden
Nami's
arc.
flashback is when Arlong murders Belmare by shooting
Just so
her in
y'all
the
know.
head in the manga, or the chest in the anime, or the head in the anime specials. Whatever the case, he shoots her. Now, not only is the weapon a problem here, but so is the general idea of death. Because remember, this is kids' television, and death is
Right,
not a
he
topic
blinked
at
her.
7:30 in the morning, unless of course there are Dragon Balls involved. Sadly, no balls here, just rather unreasonable fish. And as such, the 4Kids team had to come up with their most creative solution yet, and replace the gun with Arlong pointing menacingly, as well as replace the gunshot
What?
itself with the following dialogue. How about a nice room in a dungeon for the rest of your days? But this really just, oh god, I don't know.
No
what to think.
way.
I guess that the implication is that Belmare eventually died in prison, coming naturally to the end of her days, but this just clashes with
Yo, this is probably the worst One Piece experience, bro. This man's really pointing a finger at her. So how she died right here?
everything. With Belmare dead, Nami's despair is so profound, as is the rest of Kokoyashi Village. It is enough to crush them into subservience, but with her alive at any point, the goal would shift from finding enough money to buy the village to freeing Belmare. I mean, unless of course Nami, Nojiko, and the rest of the village just decided to let her rot in what has been described as a nice room in a dungeon. Sounds quite pleasant, actually. And look, I know that the implication is that it's not a nice room at all, and Arlong is being a delicately evil prick, but the fact is that this word choice was not made to suit the character. It was made to lighten a moment that had already been significantly lightened, like you can practically
that's
hear the
whack.
showrunners in a meeting as this dialogue is being played out. So our anti-death policy means that we can't kill Belmare. So how about we have the fish guy point threateningly at her? Oh no, a threatening point is far too dark for this company. How about when he points at her, he offers her some nice accommodation? You know what, Steve? You're right. Everyone can enjoy that. Everyone except anybody watching the show, because this one move lessens the development of Nami's character, it wrecks any sense of fear regarding Arlong, and it just looks and sounds plain shit. But not quite as shit as number 1.
Alright, number 1.
Iceberg Laboon. there is no doubt in my mind that this is by far the biggest travesty committed by the Four
Laboon
that irrevocably changed the series as a whole. So basically, if you're unfamiliar with this change, once the Straw Hats clear Reverse Mountain and enter the Grand Line, in the 4Kids version, they do not encounter Laboon. Instead, what they see is a giant iceberg, to which Luffy fires a cannonball at, and they promptly move on with their journey. And this is not a simple edit like admittedly everything else on this list has been. This is actually the removal of an entire arc. Because if the Straw Hats encounter Laboon, then none of Reverse Mountain actually happens. And this is very, very bad. Because this is where the crew
ruined the arc.
Hear about Raftel for the first time and are given a log pose in which to sail the Grand Line. And when they also meet Vivi here for the first time, so Reverse Mountain is pretty pivotal for a mini arc. But if I had to speculate as to why they got rid of the entire thing, I'd say it has to do with Laboon self-harming, and the idea of the Baroque Works agent's mission to kill him. But this decision was everything, because as a result, holes needed filling. The crew needed a log pose, which conveniently appeared on the ship, without anybody realizing they needed beforehand, as well as a convenient recollection of memory, featuring reused footage of previous episodes to understand how it works. But should the 4Kids dub have continued, there would have been a completely unfixable issue, which is that Laboon and Crocus are incredibly important to the world, especially in the case of future Straw Hat pirate Brook. In fact, his entire dream rests solely on one day being able to visit the whale that was made into an iceberg. So look, while everything else on this list has been bad, some might even say pure vandalism and destruction of property, this particular change is reckless, inconceivable, and irredeemable. And so it reigns supreme in my mind as the worst change made by the worst company. But that pretty much does it for the top 5 worst changes made by 4Kids.
Yeah, I'm glad they stopped that. I'm glad they stopped that, bro. They would have ruined the whole show if they would have kept going. All right, W video, Liam.